Captain, before we step onto this living creature island, tell me, what does animal make you feel when it names a non-human creature, describes wild instincts, and labels a person's behavior as shockingly rough or powerfully intense? Meaning 1. A living creature, not a plant, especially not human. Used for creatures like dogs, birds, fish, and many wild beings. Example: an animal watched the crew from the jungle edge. Common use: wild animal, sea animal, protect animals. Wild animal. Meaning 2. An animal used for work, food, or research. Used for animals in farming, transport, or scientific study. Example: the island clinic cared for an injured work animal. Common use: farm animal, laboratory animal, work animal. Work animal. Meaning 3. The instinct-driven wild side of behavior. Used to describe raw energy, instincts, or uncontrolled behavior. Example: in the storm, his animal fear took over for a moment. Common use: animal instincts, animal side, animal energy. Animal instincts. This word can be neutral in science and nature talk, but it becomes very strong in slang when it judges behavior or intensity. Sharp eyes, Captain. Carry animal as a clean label for living creatures, a clue for instinct-driven behavior, and a high-voltage comment on someone's raw intensity as we sail to the next island. Captain, before we step onto this measurement island, tell me, what does amount make you feel when it points to how much there is, how much money is involved, and what something adds up to in the end? Meaning 1. A quantity or size of something. Used to talk about how much of something there is. Example: a small amount of fresh water remained in the barrel. Common use: a large amount of, a small amount of, the amount of water. Small amount. Meaning 2. A total sum, especially money. Used when talking about an exact total, often in payments or costs. Example: the amount on the receipt surprised the crew. Common use: pay an amount, total amount, amount due. Total amount. Meaning 3. To add up to become equal to. Used when many parts together produce a result. Example: small delays can amount to a full day lost at sea. Common use: amount to a problem, amount to a total, amount to nothing. Amount to. In formal writing, amount often pairs with of for quantity, And it can also act as a verb when many small parts combine into one clear outcome. Measure it cleanly, Captain. Carry amount for quantities, for money sums, and for those quiet little parts that add up to a big outcome as we sail to the next island. Captain, before we step onto this Wide-Eyes Island, tell me, what does amaze make you feel when it shows strong surprise, deep admiration, and disbelief that something could be real? Meaning 1. Very surprised. Used when something unexpected happens and you feel strong surprise. Example: the crew was amazed to find fresh water so quickly. Common use: amazed at, amazed by, amazed to see. Amazed. Meaning 2. Filled with admiration, impressed in a strong way. Used when you respect or admire something deeply. Example: Sirius was amazed by the navigator's skill in the fog. Common use: amazed by talent, amazed at results, amazed at how. Amazed by skill. Meaning 3. Shocked into silence, almost unable to react. Used when surprise is so strong it briefly stops you from speaking or moving. Example: they stood amazed as the storm split and the sky turned bright. Common use: stand amazed, sit amazed, look amazed. Stood amazed. Amazed is the feeling, and amazing describes the thing that causes the feeling. They often appear together in learner sentences. Let your eyes do the meaning, Captain. Carry amazed for surprise, for admiration, and for that stunned moment when reality feels too perfect to be true as we sail to the next island. Captain, before we step onto this timeline island, tell me, what does afterwards make you feel when it marks later time, a clear next step, and the quiet follow-up that comes after a turning point? Meaning 1. Later, after something has happened. Used to say something happens after a time or event. Example: the crew rested afterwards. Common use: soon afterwards, shortly afterwards, afterwards that day. Afterwards. Meaning 2. Next, in the following part of a sequence. Used to guide steps in instructions or a story. Example: check the map first, afterwards follow the coast. Common use: first, afterwards. Afterwards do this. Afterwards we go. Afterwards. Meaning 3. Later on, when reflecting back. Used in storytelling to describe what happened later, often with a reflective feel. Example: he apologized afterwards, realizing his mistake. Common use: afterwards, he/she realized. Afterwards, they learned. Afterwards, it became clear. Afterwards, I realized. Afterwards is a time marker, not a reason marker. It tells you what came later, not why it happened. Keep your sequence crystal clear, Captain. Carry afterwards to guide the listener through what comes later, what comes next, and what unfolds after the moment that changes everything as we sail to the next island. Captain, before we step onto this rough conditions island, tell me, what does adverse make you feel when it signals harmful conditions, opposition to an idea, and unwanted side effects that follow a choice? Meaning 1. Harmful, unfavorable, negative. Used for conditions or effects that cause harm or difficulty. Example: adverse weather delayed the voyage. Common use: adverse effects, adverse conditions, adverse impact. Adverse conditions. Meaning 2. Opposing in direction, acting against movement. Used especially for wind or currents that push against you. Example: an adverse wind slowed the ship. Common use: adverse wind, adverse current, adverse tide. Adverse wind. Meaning 3. Against your interests, working against your plan or goal. Used for factors that make success harder. Example: lack of supplies was adverse to their survival plan. Common use: adverse to progress, adverse to success, adverse to our aims. Adverse to the plan. Adverse is common in formal writing. You often see it with conditions or effects, and with to when it means being opposed. Stay sharp with the warning signals, Captain. Carry adverse for harsh conditions, quiet opposition, and the negative effects that can ripple through a journey as we sail to the next island.